Okay, welcome to Question Everything Why and our first video here that we're putting together. So this article came out on October 3rd, 2021. It's in Bloomberg. It's an opinion piece. So Bloomberg has been bought out by Jeff Bezos so that he can essentially just print pro-billionaire propaganda. So let's go through this. So it's give Amazon and Facebook a seat at the United Nations. Given the scope of their ambitions and our dependence on them, behemoth brands should be treated and held to account for what they really are, commercial superpowers. Or if we're, questioning everything, monopolies. And what should we do with monopolies? Well, in some cases we need to break them up, and in other cases we need to seize the means of production and make them a public company. So with Amazon, we definitely need to seize the means of production. Like having one company for all of our online shopping needs does seem to be suiting the needs for everybody in the world. And with Facebook, we need to seize the means of production of Facebook so that we can put in proper rules and values and everything like that. But Facebook as a monopoly definitely needs to be broken up, and that is most apparent with the breakdown of, or like the outage of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp for 6 hours the other day, where because WhatsApp was down, that is the main and primary source of communication and contact for a decent chunk of the world. So it just meant that people couldn't do their jobs, they couldn't contact their families, they couldn't do anything because WhatsApp is now connected to Facebook and Instagram. So definitely that is a monopoly that needs to be broken up. Having Facebook and Instagram connected is not the most horrific thing. It allows us to cross post, and they do have different, setup, so it's not the worst thing. We could definitely use with, seizing the means of production with them, because no one person deserves to get rich off of a global company, but that's that there. But let's see what Jeff Bezos and who wrote this, oh dear, Shot. I should just not be allowed to pronounce names. Have to say about this. It's getting harder to distinguish brands from nation states. No, one's a company, one's a place where people, live and take up space and stuff like that. I don't have any issues distinguishing the difference. The resemblance is not simply semiotics. I don't know what that word means, so thanks for using a word that you know that the majority of people reading this are not going to understand unless you have a very fancy education where you use this word often. So, yeah, there's that. So, and I've read this article before. It's not the only super fancy word that they like to throw in. So we've got logos, which are like flags, anthems, which are apparently like jingles, taglines, which are like mottos, mission statements, which are like constitutions. Actually, companies have to follow laws, so those ones aren't even close. Founder stories versus official histories. History is a continued piece of narration. A founder story is just how some idiot locked out, had rich parents, and was able to get rich. Terms and conditions or legal codes. Yeah, so terms and conditions are things that you can create. Legal codes are laws that they have to follow, so the terms and conditions have to follow the laws of the land. And Facebook likes to not follow the laws of the land, and they don't like it that different countries have different rules, so they get very cranky. Same thing with Amazon. Different countries, different rules. They get so cranky about it. Oh, and structures. Okay, customers versus citizens. Oh, I like how employees are not even calculated into that. Shareholders versus legislators. Actually, and I like the comparison of shareholders to legislators, because like especially in like Canada and the US, it's like, yeah, they're just hand in hand.
the people making the laws are just in the pockets of all the shareholders. Many times these people, like if they're failed lawmen, they do just become shareholders. Shareholders are basically people who put in a small amount of money into a company and then just demand that the company make huge profit and huge returns so that they can line their own bank accounts with the profit. So they get paid back their like a little bit, and then they just take and take and take and take and take and take and take, even though they've done nothing. All they've done is bully and go, yes, you must raise that line of profit, even though, you know, you should be looking to stabilize your profit because you're not a monopoly. Like any company should have stable profit from year after year after year, because you need to have a healthy marketplace with lots of options. You shouldn't be focused on destroying your competition. You know, you should just have a good baseline. It shouldn't be about constant growth. It should just be about holding your share of the market. But no, that's not how they work. Board of directors versus executives. I don't even understand what executives have to do with government, but okay. Chairman versus monarchs. Oh, oh my goodness. What a comparison. So is chairman just an honorary position? Are these people just getting paid to do nothing? They just kind of have an opinion, but they don't really do anything, but they can override at the very end. What a horrible comparison. CEOs versus presidents. Yep. And oversight boards versus judges. Yeah. People who are like, yeah. Oh, this article's already exhausting. Or even size, though the comparisons are startling. Right. Yeah, just because you've got a global company doesn't mean you get to be a nation state. That's just ridiculous. Walmart Inc. employs roughly the population of Botswana. Walmart Inc. is an incredibly large company, and Botswana is a fairly small country. Oh my goodness, I'm getting nerves doing my first video here, people. Oh boy. I already had such an issue trying to like figure out how I was recording this, and eventually I just ended up switching to screen recording, so I'm sorry about the horrible format that this is going to be posted in, but I just wanted to pull the band-aid off and just do something, and we'll see how this goes. Microsoft Corp's market cap is greater than Brazil's GDP. Well, yeah. It doesn't cost that much to make a computer, and they sell it for way more than it's worth. And they're also like selling computers to way more people than the population of Brazil. So, like, thanks for at least choosing a decent-sized country with Brazil, with a decent-sized population, but yeah, that's still not saying much. FedEx Corp has 5 times more planes than Air India Limited. That's because Air India is a semi-smaller plane company. Like, FedEx goes where, I can't even. Like, there's probably more airlines within Air India. Like, I know, like, with China, like, Air China is the government one, and then there's like 5 to 10 other airlines, so I'm assuming Air India is the government one, and then there's a whole bunch more. Like, it's not, like, I don't even bother, like, why even bother bringing that up? Probably because they're trying to trick people, sort of thing. The more substantial resemblance derives from the breadth of brand ambition and the depth of our brand dependence. No. I'm not dependent on Amazon. I can order from the web pages and the companies themselves. I just kind of like it all in one place, and then hopefully I can order a whole bunch of things into one box to help with the environmental cost. And I just in general try to avoid shopping online and buying locally anyways. So, and then with Facebook, it's not the first social media application I've used, and it's not the only one I use. And if I have to, like, as long as we're switching to something similar to Facebook, because I really enjoy the articles, and stuff like that, because it's just a major way to get articles thrown at you. And, but yeah. So take the current global chip crisis. Nowadays, ever-increasing tracts of the world economy rely on the pure wafer foundry market, of which 55% is controlled by the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. Not only does TSMC pick which business get the chips they need, and which countries get its new fab factories, the company's leadership has warned nation-states against competitive onshoring and advised China not to invade. I guess I should know more about the global chip crisis in order to understand this a little better. As to an invasion by China, said TSMC's chairman Mark Liu, let me tell you, everybody wants to have a peaceful Taiwan Strait because it is every country's benefit, but also because of the semiconductor supply chain in Taiwan, no one wants to disrupt it. This all sounds a tad whimsical. Comparing Gadflies to Goliaths, it may be because of the cultural dominance of the Westphalian system, under which the global balance of power has been envisioned since 1648 as a mosaic of centrally controlled and culturally unified nation-states, each wielding a monopoly of force inside mutually recognized borders. Yeah, most of us would prefer our countries not to be military states, and honestly, if we as a world could just stop investing in the military and start investing in the people and sustainability, the world would be a lot better place. So, wielding a monopoly of force inside mutually recognized borders. Like, how horrible of a person do you have to be to think that that is a good thing? Like, ugh. In reality, of course, these Westphalian axioms have always been more or less fluid. State sovereignty is regularly pooled militarily, legally, and economically. Notice how militarily is listed off first. Central control has repeatedly yielded to demands for democracy and regional autonomy. Cultural unity has been fragmented by religious freedom, mass migration, and globalization. The monopoly of force is increasingly challenged by stateless terror and non-state cyber attacks, and the sanctity of state borders has been violated by the miasmas of pollution, climate change, invasive species, and infectious diseases. Like, it just... We've moved on into fear-mongering. Did you even want to mention that we have good trade? Like, we have good trade. You could say that too. That said, for all its limitations, the Westphalian vision of sovereignty remains a useful lens through which to assess the emergence of brands as global players in their own right. Yet whatever this Westphalian vision means, I don't want to know anything about it. And the only word that, like, other than the word West, that I recognize is, like, phallic, and I'm like, oh, boys and their toys. Like, what? What a name. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it means. I really don't care. It sounds terrible. And it sounds like a military state and pro-grossness. Defense in the realm. External defense and internal assistance have historically been the province, the raison d'etre of developed nation-states. Earthquakes, outbreaks, hurricanes, heat waves, floods, fires, insurrections, and invasions demand a scale of command and control typically available only to state military and civil agencies. I thought we were talking about giving Amazon and Facebook a seat at the table, not fear-mongering. Control typically only available to state military and civil agencies. We could just, reroute, the military funding towards more like civil agencies and stuff like that, like the Red Cross and whatnot, which could help out much better with like earthquakes, outbreaks, hurricanes, heat waves, floods, fires. And insurrections are only because your government is corrupt and generally a right-wing fascist. Sometimes it is the right-wing fascist coming out to like trying to start an insurrection. Invasions are very rare. Like, and you know, if you're concerned about invasions, like you're probably in an area with a decent military type thing, but this is not something for North America. And like, this is just, you know, for the North Americans who are afraid with the immigrant problems. They're like, are being invaded, the border, all these immigrants. Like, they're just stoking those fears and not actually talking about realities of areas that are, you know, at war and are having those kind of invasion type things. You know, it's just ridiculous. COVID-19 tested this truism even in the most advanced nations, both because of the pandemic's unprecedented global impact and because the highly specialized responses it required could only be provided expeditiously by brands. No, actually, if we as a world owned all the means of production for the production of like medical supplies and the medical drugs and everything like that, we would have actually been able to produce the vaccine that we needed on a grander scale so that everybody could have it, because right now we're just not meeting production. We could have much better done the production of the personal protective equipments and everything else like that. Having it as brands actually really severely slowed us down. And it actually was the altruism of the small businesses who retrofitted their manufacturing in order to help out with production that actually helped. Not the big brands. Big brands, no. They just did not see the money in being helpful, whereas the smaller companies actually stepped up. But what we need is for, you know, the government control to tell those big companies, yeah, we don't need your shitty stuff. Let's manufacture what we need in order to conquer this. So the big brands actually worked against us, and we still haven't, you know, gotten this all figured out because people need to be capitalists and make money off of, you know, people suffering, and the longer it goes on, the more money they make. So yeah, like we could have all just, you know, stayed home for a month and worn masks, but no, we had to have business and capitalism and the economy. It was ridiculous. In many ways, the initial scramble for personal protective equipment and the subsequent jostling for tests and vaccines respected conventional, if questionable, public-private supply chains, even if the pandemic's severity meant deploying emergency powers, seeking legal coercion, and providing liability shields. Yeah, so, you know, even if the pandemic severity meant deploying emergency powers, things closer to communism than capitalism. But yet, the 1950s Defense Production Act was never actually used. Companies were not forced to produce anything, nor were stockpiles restored, nor was anything good done. And I like how the European Union sued AstraZeneca because their shot has been questionable and has been causing other issues. The Moderna Pfizer one seems to just be, it has a higher efficiency, it's having less reactions, you know, and like the AstraZeneca was just like a smaller company, I believe, as well. Like, you know, and like it is still a very viable option, but you know, if only like we just cared more to make sure that we were putting the best product out there that everybody could use instead of allowing capitalists to try to profit off of it, because really we only needed one vaccine, not a whole bunch of them. And like the Pfizer Moderna one is, they're essentially the same vaccine just made by two different companies. So like if we had been sharing information more, we wouldn't have had the problem with less effective and more problemsome vaccines. So once again, communism wins, capitalism is why we're currently in the situation we are currently in. And it used to be like a socialist democratic, but I'm seriously just starting to lean more and more between for communism as every day goes on. More novel was how nation states turned to private companies to solve the unprecedented challenge of contact tracing entire populations. Well, no, that's just because governments, instead of like using, well, in Canada, we're using like each province's health board things, and then in the US, because they don't have public health care, they have private health care. They went to private firms just like all the rest of their health care. So it depends on the country if they used public tracing or private tracing, but thanks for thinking the United States is the entire world. In May 2020, Apple Inc. and Alphabet Inc.'s Google set aside their rivalry to launch an exposure notification API available to official public health bodies via iOS and Android. By September 2021, more than 40 countries and 25 US states had plugged into this API, including initially resistant nations like England, Finland, Germany, and Norway. Significantly, many of the independent state-led solutions, notably Singapore's Blue Trace, Israel's Hamagan, and France's Tu Anti-Covid, were still obliged to interact with Google and Apple, if only to use their App Store protocols to get their technology onto the citizens' phones. So yeah, both Apple and Google didn't set aside their rivalry. Like, they just both had to work to make sure that their products were working with the contact tracing stuff. And if they did work together to develop something, then they had to, because it was dependent on their company. Like, if their company didn't do that, it would have reflected poorly on them. So it's not, setting aside their rivalries. It's just, well, they own the monopolies, and they had to make sure that everything was compatible between both of them. So just, what a waste of my time having to read that. Such embedded reliance helps explain why, even in the depths of COVID's first winter, Edelman's trust barometer indicated that CEOs were more trusted than government leaders, religious leaders, and journalists. I don't even know what an Edelman's trust barometer, like who that is, but yeah, I don't know how much more, but I mean, sure. I mean, I'm sure they're all around the same level of distrust. Like, I'm sure they're all on the distrust side of the scale. But, lots of people really worship CEOs because they one day think that they're going to have that. But you're actually more likely to win the lottery than you are to become like a multi-millionaire or a billionaire sort of thing. Like, and I don't think people realize that. Just how rare it is that you are going to make money and get rich. Business was more trusted than government in 18 out of 27 countries. Yeah, because I trust the business to be open, and like the grocery store to be open and give me food. I don't trust the government to do much. Like, they just generally lie. They're all very conservative, and all they care about is lining the rich people business pockets. But I trust the businesses to want to continue to make money and be capitalists. So yeah, 68% thought CEOs should step in when governments fail to fix societal problems. Can we just tax the CEOs and taxing the rich? That would be an awesome way that they could step in. So, and many small companies did step up. The bigger companies, not really, and if they did, they took things back, and it just hasn't been good. The internal dependence on far from neutral brands did not go unnoticed, as one anonymous German official told Politico, "We need to have a discussion on how Silicon Valley is increasingly taking over the job of a nation state. We don't need to have it amid a pandemic." So it's basically just, especially with the United States, how corporations, like basically everything is just run to increase the wealth of corporations and not run to increase the wealth of everyday people so that we can, eat and have a place to live. So, yeah. If this unnamed German is right about the discussion, she's wrong about the timing. I like how they're like unnamed German and then all of a sudden they add in a she to help further narrow down. As history teaches us, a Pandora's box of profit seeking seldom fails to open for the apocalyptic horseman. We don't want to open Pandora's box. It's filled with disease. But it's the apocalyptic horsemen that want to cause the apocalypse to kill everything. So I guess they want to open Pandora's box. Whether it's Coca-Cola achieving a global presence on the coattails of World War II, okay, or the explosion of mercenary groups during the global war on terror. 2006, the Private Security Company Association of Iraq estimated there were more than 48,000 mercenaries inside Iraq, a combined force greater than 3 U.S. Army divisions. Okay, so first things first, 48,000 mercenaries doesn't actually tell you if they're right-wing or left-wing. And a combined force greater than 3 U.S. Army divisions, yeah, I don't think Army divisions are necessarily that large. Like, those are just different, like, squadrons, like, how many are, like, this is specifically vague, and it's just supposed to be like, oh my goodness, it's so big, it's so large, it's so scary, when it's like, it's not, they're not even telling you anything, really. It's just trying to scare you. And it's like Coca-Cola achieving a global presence on the coattails of World War II. So yeah, like, American soldiers wanted Coke all around the world, and they sent it out, and now all of a sudden it's everywhere. Like, it's fine. People like Coke. Like, nobody's saying if people like products that we shouldn't distribute them. Like, I don't even know where they're going with this. Oh, this one was hilarious. Unless we forget, the flag of McDonald's Corporation still flutters proudly over Gitmo. That's McDonald's. You can literally see Ronald McDonald in the outside area. Like, why are they providing a photo of a McDonald's and being like, the flag of McDonald's Corp still flutters proudly over Gitmo? I don't even know what Gitmo is. I'm like, Guantanamo Bay is like the closest thing to Gitmo, but like, possibly a country, but there's a McDonald's with a McDonald's flag outside of it. So scary. How scary. A McDonald's with a McDonald's flag. Oh no. The terror. The terror. And like, it doesn't make them a nation state. Brand ambassadors. The revolving door between politics and businesses. Business has spun for generations. Right. Because the big business people go into politics after so that they can put in policies to help support their businesses while screwing over everybody else. And then once they're done with politics, they go back to their cushy jobs in business, getting paid ridiculous sums of money for bullying and intimidating and, making the tough decisions such as like cutting employees so that they can show that they saved money, cost-saving cuts to, make the shareholders happy and increase those profits. Like, ugh. On one side of the transom are commercial companies snapping up the power, prestige, and phone books of former heads of state. And I love that they have, like, on one side of the transom. This is the first time I've ever seen the word transom, and I love how it's, like, the only thing I can think of is the word ransom. I'm like, right. Yeah. It's like, yeah. Yeah, I fully believe the ransom thing. Um, so John Major to Carlyle Group. So Carlyle Group is a thing of investors, I do believe. Nicholas Sarkozy to Accor SA. Malcolm Turnbull to KKR and Co. So these sound like investment groups, like, you know, if they did a good job in the political scheme at putting through capitalist things, they'll be rewarded with cushy jobs in the businesses afterwards. It's, you know, not that surprising. On the other side are global statesmen eager to build own branded ventures with more and less charitable aims. So they either are charitable things or they aren't. So Kissinger Associates, probably not. Clinton Foundation, I think that one is a charitable foundation, and Tony Blair Associates. So they just put together these foundations just to make it easier for them to make charitable donations, because when they're in politics they can't own companies, so they don't, and then as soon as they're free they're able to. I'm really not that concerned, like, with politicians that form businesses after they're done in politics. Like, they're still allowed to work. Like, I'm concerned with some of the quality and like what they're doing with it, and generally the type of quality of politicians we're getting in the first place, but you know, it's just a little ridiculous. Such second acts are seldom subtle, so the less charitable aims are seldom subtle. So yeah, they're looking to make money. From the announcement that former Canadian Prime Minister Brian Mulroney would join the U.S. cannabis company Acreage Holdings Inc. on the day Canada legalized pot. So yeah, some people are allowed to invest. And that's what people with money do. They invest their money into things so that they can become like shareholders and make a whole bunch of money off of it. It's not that surprising. To David Cameron's cack-handed, if lucrative, shilling for Greensill Capital. Okay, so yeah, like they paid him to promote it. Like, I don't necessarily like politicians to begin with, and like I know that they're just capitalist shills, so it's not surprising when they continue just to be capitalist shills. Maybe a little more than a title bump from celebrity endorser. It's quite a huge bump from celebrity endorser, because they actually have the ability and power to influence decisions, and even like to advise the current politicos on, you know, what decisions they should be making. So it takes on a darker meaning when the CEO of ExxonMobil becomes Donald Trump's Secretary of State. Yeah, like, they're all shady to begin with. Like, I've been going over this for the last few minutes here, so. Or when the owner of the New York Jets is appointed America's ambassador to the UK. So firstly, in order to be the owner of the New York Jets, you must have a lot of money. So they're just trying to trivialize whoever this is and noticeably hide the company and businesses that they're doing, that they're with. So weird that they did that. Is appointed America's ambassador to the UK. Okay. Like, it's just business people helping their business friends, and they're all in politics, so. But even by these low standards, something seems to have slipped. When in 2018, Facebook Inc. hired the former UK Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg as its Vice President of Global Affairs. The appointment was widely viewed not as an old school sign cure, but as something more sinister, a political heat shield for a behemoth accused of enabling evils from fraud to genocide, to say nothing of its anti-democratic impact on elections across the globe. So, however, if it's true that in January Mark Zuckerberg deferred to Nick Clegg on whether to allow Donald Trump back onto Facebook and Instagram, it would mark a pivotal spin of the revolving door, the CEO of the world's sixth largest company delegating to a former British Deputy Prime Minister the power to influence the political future of a one-term American president. Yeah, his political future is not dependent on Facebook. First off, that's ridiculous. Um, Nick Clegg was UK Deputy Prime Minister, and he was hired as Vice President of Global Affairs. So that has to do with legality. So he's already worked most likely with international people, so he has the connections, he knows the global laws and stuff like that. So it's not actually that much of like a difference in position. So like handling global affairs includes knowing global and international laws, being able to speak to these people, being able to have influence in order to make sure that Facebook is being compliant with different international laws. Say nothing of its anti-democratic impact on elections across the globe. So I'm going with that has to do with some of the Republicans' advertisements being taken down by Facebook, and stuff like that. And then there was accused of enabling evils from fraud to genocide. So like any company out there in the world, they will only operate to what is legal. So because most of that stuff is fairly legal, Facebook doesn't have to regulate to it. So people, do fraud all the time. And it's like, so they're just having a place of like free speech. And it is actually the police's job, the police, to, actually investigate and arrest people. But the police very rarely investigate and arrest people. So like if people actually were like reporting things as like hate crimes and like violence, or like this person like threatened me and stuff like that, and Facebook could actually forward the stuff to the police to actually go and investigate and arrest and charge people. But the police don't want that kind of relationship with Facebook because they don't actually really want to do their jobs. Like, they don't take those kind of things seriously. So most of that is actually in the hands of the police to investigate if they decided they wanted to actually start doing that stuff, and to, set up with, Facebook the ability to handle that. Like, flag to police, tag the police in this post, and giving police special abilities. Like once somebody's tagged, they can go in and take a look. Like there's so many things that working with the police department that they could do to help fight crime. But instead it's on Facebook just to not allow these people the space to voice their opinions so they can still hold these terrible aspects. Like the correct way is to actually appropriately handle this situation instead of like being like, well, Facebook has to like regulate it all. But a lot of the problem is that the people that they need to regulate is the right wing, and the right wing is the capitalists that are in the government and the people voting and supporting them, who are allowing Facebook to essentially pay $0 in taxes. So it's not that they support the, the fraud and the genocide, it's just that they support themselves not paying taxes and stuff like that. So they just turn a blind eye to all that kind of stuff. It's like, well, if both parties just decided to, make the company pay taxes, and there wasn't any political reason for why they should support one political team over the other, then we'd probably have better and more fair regulation of what people can and cannot post on social media. So it's more to the laws of the country, and more just due to the fact that they need to support the right-wing stuff because they're the ones putting through the laws that benefit Facebook. So much for Clegg's pre-election preening. Would it be acceptable to society at large to have a private company in effect become a self-appointed referee for everything that politicians say? I don't believe it would be. Well, they already are the self-appointed referee for everything that politicians say. Like, the right wing doesn't necessarily speak without, thinking what's going to keep my big companies happy, because the big companies just want to pay the least amount of taxes. So, yeah. Change is also afoot on the freelance side of K Street. On leaving office, Barack Obama followed well-worn convention by establishing the Obama Foundation. Our mission is to inspire, empower, and connect people to change their world. More unexpected was his decision to create Higher Ground, an independent production company. Oh, go notification. An independent production company that immediately struck multi-year deals with Netflix Inc. and Spotify Technology, and executive produced American Factory, the very on-brand Oscar-winning documentary exploring labor relations and trade with China. So he made a charitable company and a production company in order to produce documentary type stuff. Oh no, how terrible. Oh no. The Obama playbook of branded content, second act, beyond books and speeches, will inevitably attract a new cohort of youthful former statesmen keen to wield soft power and earn small fortunes, unfettered by orthodox gatekeepers. I mean, I'm not an Obama fan. Both parties in the Republican and the Democrats in the United States are right wing, and he enacted quite a few terrible policies, like the child separation, whole bunch of wars, the drone strikes, it's just, and then the medical care, the Affordable Care Act that only brought a small population of the United States the ability to have health care. And it's just it was a small step in the right direction, but left so many people behind. It's just it wasn't enough. He's definitely probably close to the top of my favorite American politicians, but it's all on a list of dislike because I don't think there's one I actually like. So, yeah, no. But, so let's continue on. Quitting the royal family, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle lost no time in establishing their own indie shop, Archwell Productions, inking copycat deals with Netflix and Spotify, and collaborating on an Apple TV Plus series with the brand powerhouse Oprah Winfrey. Okay. And are we calling them a nation state now? What is with bringing them into this? In a world where everybody has an opinion about people they don't know, the Duke and Duchess have compassion for the people they don't know. They don't just opine, they run towards the struggle, writes somebody. Yeah, I can't actually picture either one of them doing that. So, ignoring that. Naturally, such stellar brands don't twinkle alone. Oh my goodness, this was the hilarious paragraph. Oh, the visualizations on this, just so much space thing. So naturally, such stellar brands don't twinkle alone. Off they rocket to a galaxy of VIP constellations. Oh. Aspen, Alfalfa, Davos, Jackson Hole, Munich, Milken, Sicily, and Sun Valley, to say nothing of Bohemian Grove and Bilderberg, where they signal boost alongside the new nomenclatura of Bono, Bill ×2, Blair, and Bezos, to name just some of the Bs. I think whoever wrote this article had way too much fun with this last paragraph. Naturally, such stellar brands don't twinkle alone. Off they rocket to a galaxy of VIP constellations. Oh dear. Move fast and break laws. Although the ability to enact and enforce legislation is a defining characteristic of the nation-state, private companies have long been powerful enough to shape public laws to their liking behind closed doors. Now, however, brands have also become far more willing, eager even, to take overt positions on specific laws. Okay. Not paying any taxes? In April, hundreds of companies, including Amazon, Google, Netflix, and Starbucks, protested against restrictive voting laws in Georgia, Texas, and other states. Did they? Did they really? Because I doubt that. They may have said, they just want to come out to make it seem like they care, because, they had stepped over a line in the voter suppression. And so it's like, hey, you just crossed the line. We want you to suppress votes, but not like that. Naughty, naughty. Okay. And in September, Lyft Inc. and Uber Technologies Inc. pledged to pay the legal fees of any of their drivers sued under Texas's draconian new abortion legislation. They're not protesting against protesting against anything. So Lyft and Uber, their drivers have to pick people up and deliver them to wherever people ask. So if their drivers are concerned that if they pick somebody up and take them to go get an abortion, that they may go to jail. So therefore, all of Lyft and Uber's drivers may just quit. So it's in order to protect their capital. They don't actually care about the abortion law. They're just like, whoa, we might lose all of our drivers because nobody's going to want to drive for us just in case. And we also don't want to be associated with if drivers are calling in those things because of privacy. So, and then people possibly suing them as well. So it's actually just to protect, their capital and their ability to do business. It's not a protest because of values. So nice try, Bloomberg. The woman-founded and women-led dating app of Bumble Inc. went further, creating a relief fund for anyone seeking an abortion in Texas, a move that suggests a novel form of corporate jury nullification. No, it doesn't. Corporate jury nullification. Oh my goodness. So the only thing I know about Bumble is this is the dating app where women have to send the message first. So, and it's just to help to protect from terrible men and horrible pickup lines and just that kind of thing. Like it's just women initiative. So of course they're supporting other women and they're like a semi-smaller business. So, and lots of companies put together funds in order to, help people and make all sorts of charitable donations. So you're just cranky. Bum, bum, bum. Of course, brands wield their greatest legal power at the tabula rasa stage of innovation, before relevant rules and regulations are even envisaged. Lumbering legislators in dozens of nation-states are confronting the consequences of a disruption culture that has learned it's better to sue for forgiveness than petition for permission. Yeah, so instead of following the laws, they just sue and hopefully everything gets adjusted in their favor. And if not, they'll just close the company, causing a whole bunch of people to lose their jobs. And then a whole bunch of people will be out of jobs. And generally, they also got investment money from the government in order to set things up there. So it's just a huge loss. So in the end, they just hope that they're just going to get their way and the laws are going to change to their favor. Which they sometimes do and they sometimes don't. So, yep. Many of our busiest brands have blitzscaled to vast market caps by leapfrogging their industry's rules and regulations and embedding themselves into society's fabric before elected politicians have uncapped their pens. As we see from legal challenges across the globe, the most brazen examples are to be found in the sphere of peer-to-peer platforms, where accommodation companies sidestep the taxes paid by estate agents, renters and hoteliers, and ride-sharing brands circumvent the norms of employment and qualification. It takes London's licensed cabbies 3 to 4 years to acquire the knowledge in quotations. So London is huge. So yeah, it takes 3 to 4 years to figure out where all the streets are. That's not the qualifications that they're discussing there. And the ride-sharing brands are circumventing, paying their employees a proper salary. They're circumventing the unions. You need a special cabbie license in order to be a cab driver. So this is a special license that says that, yes, I am a really incredibly safe driver. The vehicles also have special insurance because they are running all day, and they're also company cars, so that when they need repairs, the company has to pay for them. And then also there is the insurance and life insurance policies, which they have in case the driver does get into an accident. So it's taking away a whole bunch of safeguards. So basically, they're not allowed to operate, but they've bullied their way into being able to operate. And please, 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 please do not use Uber or Lyft. Please go with a cabbie. They are union employees. Their vehicles are paid for by the cab company, and they don't have to fix them. They have proper licenses and insurance. And it's just, oh, I can't even. Where accommodation companies sidestep the taxes paid by estate agents, renters, and hoteliers. So it's like, instead of having to use a real estate agent and them taking a fee, they're just advertising themselves off of a central thing. I'm not too concerned about kicking out real estate agents. Like, you won't see me crying for them. I am concerned about like Airbnb buying up houses instead of people staying in hotels, which is causing the housing and rental market to increase. So I'm concerned about those negative effects. So let's continue. However, innovation is outpacing the legislation across a swath of new industries, not least vaping, virtual reality, fintech, food tech, drones, and 3D printing. Okay, so outpacing legislation. So when it comes to vaping, the regulators just want to kill it instead of like actually putting in appropriate laws. So there are a few ingredients that should be allowed, and basically the only thing with vaping that has been an issue is there are a few illegal marijuana companies who have been putting vitamin E into their substances for whatever reason, which are causing the lung collapses. So most of the bigger companies are using the products they're supposed to be using. So we don't actually need much regulation there. We just need food standard. Is everything food grade? Okay, these are the chemicals you're allowed to use. These are the tobacco amounts you're allowed to use. Like, it's not the drama that they're so afraid of. Virtual reality. I cannot think of any law for virtual reality that wouldn't already be in place for film, television, stage, etc. And video games that would, like, what legislation do we need for virtual reality? Like, I can't even with that. Like, the laws are already there. You don't have to create a specific law for virtual reality. The rules already exist for other mediums. Just because it's a new medium does not mean it needs a new law. No clue what fintech is or food tech. Drones. So drones are actually pretty legislated. Like, you can't fly them in lots of places. So just because of like privacy concerns of people like filming, and if you're talking military drones, they should not be used at all and should be eliminated. It's the whole concept of just clicking a button to murder hundreds of people. Like, there's just that disconnect. So just think of like when they used to line people up to shoot them, right? So they would bring out like 10 soldiers or 20 soldiers to shoot at the line, and like and they would give them enough bullets that everybody was just blindly shooting so that they wouldn't have the guilty conscience of knowing if they actually hit somebody or not, because everybody's shooting at the same target, so they wouldn't know if they were the ones who did the kill shot. So there's just that general disconnect between, a soldier on the ground actually taking the care to properly fire and aim a gun versus just dropping a bomb on somebody just because you think you've got it in the right area. Most drone attacks are like killing 99% innocent people and like 1% not innocent. Like, they're just, so many innocent families have just died at the hands of drones. It's pretty gross. 3D printing. So I take it this is just because you can like print off guns. That's the only legislation, like, and like that people are going to be able to print things themselves. So it's like, oh no, your poor monopolies of production are at risk if we like start 3D printing things. Oh dear. As the U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg admitted to Axios, the technology powering self-driving vehicles has left Model T regulation in the dust. And that's just horrible to like go with Model T regulation, because Ford was just a terrible, terrible racist, horrible person. And we need to quit like giving all the assembly line bullshit to him and like so much power to him and worshiping him. Technology powering self-driving vehicles is left. But the thing is too, like, has left Model T regulation in the dust. Well, actually, I think most of our laws have left Model T regulation in the dust because we've like added seat belts and horns, and horns might have always been there, but like all of these safety regulations and like environmental regulations and stuff like that, like screw the self-driving. We've had so many other regulations that left the Model T regulations in the dust already. So, oh, you're just showing your like support for racism there. But yeah, we've got a lot of very detailed authorities for regulating where a mirror ought to go. They don't even contemplate a scenario where we're talking about sensors doing the work that mirrors or human beings used to. Yeah, so if the self-driving vehicle kills somebody, then they've broken the regulations in place. But for now, as we're like figuring them out, until there's a need to regulate something, the rules are, yeah, follow all the traffic laws and don't kill anybody. Like, and obviously the sensors have to make sure that they're following all the traffic laws and are not killing anybody. What more? And that people need to be awake and actually driving it. Like, the companies are trying their best to like self-regulate. So, and until we actually need to pass legislation, we will, but like they're doing a half decent job trying to make sure that it's safe, even if I frickin' hate most of those companies. So they're just trying to, like, it's just fear mongering. It's like, yeah, like there's already plenty of laws that they have to follow. Like, what more laws do you need them to create? And plus with patents and stuff like that, like, we can't really have regulations about where sensors go. Like, they just need to be doing their job. Also, in regards to mirrors, we would also greatly benefit from having that secondary curved mirror on our side mirrors, like big trucks do, in order to see in the blind spot and stuff like that. So we don't even properly regulate it to make sure that our mirrors are effective. So lies, 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 lies. Finally, because taxation is just legislation with its hand out. Oh. Multinationals have eagerly exploited global gaps and mismatches in nation-state tax codes to pay low or no corporate tax. Yeah, so we just need to tax them, make sure that they keep all their money onshore, and if they're offshoring their money, punish them. According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, such base erosion and profit shifting strategies cost nation states between 100 and 240 billion a year in lost revenue, or 4 to 10% of the global corporate income tax take. So they don't cost nation states anything. This is a tactic that businesses use for when they could have made profit but they didn't. They like to say like it's a loss of a profit or cost, when no, you didn't own that money to begin with, but unfortunately the government actually is owed that money. So this is just people scamming and stealing from the government almost. Or 4 to 10% of the global corporate income tax take. So it's actually kind of small, which just goes to show how little taxes that they have to pay in the first place, because that 4 to 10% should actually be much, much, much higher, because we should be taxing them much, much, much more. But yeah. With Brandstrom, space exploration was once the strategic preserve, technical province, and patriotic pride of nation states, even if brands like IBM, Whirlpool, and Hasselblad were central to the 1969 Apollo 11 mission. There is no question that the moon's first flag would be that of the United States and not the then Grumman Corporation, which made the lunar module. No, they made parts of it, just as many other companies made parts of it, but they didn't, like, it was launched off of NASA. They designed it, like, and a whole bunch of corporations. But it was the country that funded it and the country whose pilots were on the plane, not the employees of the company. So, like, if Amazon or Virgin or any of these other people are going to space decide to go to moon, yeah, you know that they'd stick their own freaking flag there. Like, just what a waste of my time. Fast forward 50 years and the answer is not so obvious. Well, that's because the private corporation is making the thing and not a public corporation. So the answer is very obvious. It's not hidden. Like, so if Amazon flies to the moon, they're going to stick a flag there of themselves, sort of thing. Like, I just finished saying that. So today's space race has been joined by Blue Origin, SpaceX, and Virgin Orbit, the competitive grandchildren of billionaire businessmen who are motivated less by romantic stargazing than rapacious freebooting. So, and basically, like, it's come to everybody's attention that these companies are just doing this so that they can deliver weapons around the globe quicker, so that we can just, murder people in, like, the Middle East and South Africa, and I meant to say South America, Africa as a whole, South America, etc., quicker, just so we can transport weapons faster around the world instead of having to take, like, global planes or on ships or anything like that. So, as the earth floods, burns, chokes, and shakes, so Atlas shrugs. Oh, we're back to the fear-mongering again. And the world's richest brand leaders set a course for Planet B as a place to dump heavy industry, lure tourists, and escape the thin air of tax and regulation. They don't pay taxes, and they're always trying to undercut regulations because they're just capitalists looking to make money instead of, knowing that we have to save the environment, and in order to do that, you have to produce things ethically, and that costs money. And they would much rather just not produce anything ethically, just destroy the environment and leave that for somebody else's problem for another day. Well, they plan to apparently just go to another planet, but we're not even going to be close to being able to do that anytime soon. Ridiculous. Escape the thin air of tax and regulation, the mission statement of Google's Lunar X Prize could hardly be bunter. Space exploration had been in the exclusive domain of governments. Commercial exploration had not been a viable option, restricting creativity and resources of private markets. No, it wasn't restricting creativity because it was all these private companies who were actually making the parts to build the spaceships, as was advised earlier by this exact same article. It's amazing how you couldn't even remember what you wrote a few paragraphs earlier. And restricting resources of private markets. So there is the quickly moving about of the stuff for the military, because, the military stuff is where all the big money is anyways. Those endless wars. So it was not restricting creativity. There's been plenty of companies producing space parts. They've all been private. And the only reason why private companies were not able to visit space is because of the ridiculous sums of money that it costs in order to put together something like this. And that only recently, in like the last 10 years, since they've really 10, 20, 30, 40 years when capitalism has really exploded and everything like that they've created enough wealth for themselves to be able to invest in stupid, ridiculous things like this. So In our gilded age of cosmo-capitalism, the final frontier, like this person literally looked up all these space words. This is the second paragraph of space words. Offers a libertarian terra nova beyond the wildest dreams of seasteading. Just call it anarchy. Anarchy. That's libertarians don't believe in any rules or regulations. They just are anarchists. It's just call it anarchy. Onto which castronauts, oh my goodness, can project their commercial cupidity, unfettered by hidebound laws, dead-handed bureaucracy, imperial ideologies, arts degree intellects, and GAAP accounting. Oh dear, yeah, watch out for those arts degree people. You know, they might actually care about other human beings. Oh no, caring about other people and the environment. How horrible. You know, those hidebound laws and dead-handed bureaucracy. Oh no, rules and regulations and paying your employees. Oh, and labor laws for how long they can work and all these horrible things. Oh no. Oh no, if only we could go to Mars and then we could just enslave people again properly. Oh dear, oh dear. Like really, like how apparent is this whole thing? Fast forward another 50 years and private brands may well be planting extraterrestrial territorial logos alongside the flags of nation states. Elon Musk is already there. The terms and conditions of his satellite's internet services Starlink boldly state, for services provided on Mars or in transit to Mars via Starship or other colonization spacecraft, as parties recognize Mars as a free planet and that no Earth-based government has authority or sovereignty over Martian activities. Accordingly, disputes will be settled through self-governing principles established in good faith at the time of Martian settlement. Yeah, truly the ego has landed. This is the only statement I agree with in this whole article. Yeah, like he doesn't get to dictate the rules, and like you are going to be dependent on other people to make it habitable. So, you know, it just doesn't work well with others. UN branded. The United Nations currently grants observer status to some 120 intergovernmental organizations and specialized agencies, from the Sovereign Order of Malta to the International Seabed Authority. Doubtless these bodies do admirable work, but is the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean vastly more vital to global democracy than Twitter Inc.? It's actually United Nations, and the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean includes a large collection of nations plus some bodies of water. The Sovereign Order of Malta. So Malta is like one of the smallest countries in the world. So I don't know if they get a proper seat at the UN. So they're just coming in like that. International Seabed Authority. Yeah, because they're there to protect the seabeds from international companies. So yes, yeah, they help the nations because we need fishies to eat and clean oceans and stuff like that. So yeah, no, they're very important. Twitter does not make the world go round, but the International Seabed Authority, I'm assuming, helps to keep the seabed clean and helps the world. Or the International Telecommunication Union, more unifying of international telecoms than Google. Yeah, so the International Telecommunication Union works to keep long distance calls down, to make sure that there are proper phone networks between people so that we can have contact in business and commerce. And this was very important as we were still installing phone lines and all of that stuff. And they also help with internet because that is part of the telecommunications and with cell phones. So Google isn't actually connecting people. The telecommunication companies that are providing the internet so that we can access Google are actually connecting people. And they're making sure that everybody has access and that the countries are, you know, making sure that they are setting it up so people can continue to have access to the internet and the phone. Huge difference. And if such brands might be granted observer status, why not full membership? Because they're not a nation and they're just there to voice their opinions and represent the people so that they have stuff. Whereas Twitter doesn't represent anybody. We can go without Twitter, and Google, very handy, but not needed for the world to go around. Because without telecommunications, Google would be nothing. In 2011, the Republic of South Sudan became the largest country to join the UN after its people voted overwhelmingly to secede from the North. Last year, South Sudan's GDP was $4 billion, roughly equivalent to 2% of Jeff Bezos' current net worth, or 0.2% of Amazon's market cap. A pandemic that made countries poorer made CEOs richer. Gee, I wonder how the CEOs got richer and the countries got poorer. It's almost like they paid no taxes and benefited off of us needing products and services while underpaying their staff and just raising their prices and collecting all the wealth for themselves instead of investing in the people. Wow, what a concept. Of course, such comparisons are not simply about relative sums of money, but power. If Amazon decided to follow Ben & Jerry's lead and pull its products from the Israeli-occupied territories, or indeed from any of the 188 countries from which Amazon does business, what might the impact be, and who would be able to stop it? Well, the impact would be that Amazon makes less money, and Amazon as a company has a decision on which countries they want to do business in or which countries they don't. And it really doesn't affect people. So because they could just buy from the individual companies themselves and have them shipped out, or they could just shop locally. They're trying to create all this drama oh no, this company Amazon that's only been around for 10, 20 years, what would happen if it suddenly, all of a sudden didn't exist? Oh no. Yeah, we would just go back to the way things were before Amazon. It's fine. It's not a problem. No third party has seriously impeded Facebook's growth, influence, or toxicity. Certainly not its much vaunted oversight board, nor even Congress, which regularly clowns itself in the presence of disruptive CEOs. Whatever. This is not to say that South Sudan shouldn't be the UN's 193rd member, but why not make Amazon the 194th? Because you're not a country. Because you are not relevant, Amazon. I'm sorry. You're not. Of course, in some ways it already is. No, Amazon is not a country. They just steal from every country in the world and all their employees. So, despite the UN Secretary General's rabble-rousing condemnation of billionaires joyriding to space while millions go hungry on Earth, yeah, I just want them to pay taxes. I honestly could care less about the joyriding to space. I would like to see more space exploration. Maybe if we could, space exploration makes people happy. People like arts, entertainment, and sports. And we haven't been doing space launches. We've done the Mars stuff, and we've got a few things, but people like this stuff. I think that they shouldn't have the money in order to be able to just do this, but I'm not against space exploration. I like space. I want us to explore more. I would like for us to invest more in space exploration. I want us to invest in the Earth and feed people and all sorts of stuff like that, but I don't have any problems with space stuff, Antonio Guterres would doubtless jump at a meeting with Jeff Bezos with at least the same alacrity as he'd sit down with South Sudan's President Salva Kiir. Equally, if President Kiir could address either the General Assembly or Sun Valley, is it obvious which he would choose? So if the UN Secretary wanted to have a sit-down with a really small country like South Sudan, or have a sit-down with one of the largest global companies, Amazon, yeah, they're going to take Amazon because Amazon has a bigger effect on the world than South Sudan. Sorry, South Sudan. But and hopefully influence them in more positive manners to like pay their staff, follow the laws of each country, pay their bloody taxes, and all that other stuff. Whereas we don't, South Sudan they're there to make sure that everything in South Sudan is going well. Okay. We are so used to brands leaning towards liberalism. Nope, they are extremely conservative, or at least paying lip service to it. Nope, they are extremely conservative. They don't want to pay taxes. They don't want to increase employee wages. They just want to increase the shareholders and CEO wages while increasing profits. We risk mistaking cynical head fakes for genuine conviction, especially as our apparent reliance on them grows. What does it tell us that Samsung Electronics Co. promises everything we do is guided by a moral compass? Well, Samsung is in Asia, and Asia is very community versus the individual. So if they do not have a communal mission statement, they will have no customers. That is simply, their mission statement is simply guided by capitalism. It's not because they have any morals. Or that Royal Dutch Shell plc feels obligated to state, we empower our staff and business partners to say no. Okay. So, like, that's all good and well when companies say, like, we want people to say no, and, like, we don't just want yes men. But there's a huge difference between listening to their employees and letting them have a say and actually doing what the employees say. So, like, my last company I worked at, they were constantly asking for our opinions and then enacted less than 10% of it. So what good is being able to say no if they're not actually going to listen? It doesn't mean that they actually have to listen or do anything that people said no about. What happens if such liberal masks slip? Exactly. It's a mask. So they're not actually liberal. Yeah, you just, ruined your own argument in your own paragraph, or are abandoned altogether. See, it's just a mask to make themselves look more progressive. It's just like donating to charity. Instead of paying their taxes so that we don't have to have any charities and that everything is just funded, they just do that to make themselves look good. They're not actually liberal, very capitalist. If brands have the power, wealth, and impact of nation states and increasingly act like nation states, no, they don't have the impact of nation states, and they don't act like nation states. Should they not be brought into the nation state community and held to account for what they really are, equals allies, competitors, and threats? Well, they're definitely threats. Definitely threats. Competitors, yep, they're at competition with everybody just to, make more money. With assistance by Laura Williams. I wonder if Laura wrote this and not, like, did Ben just, assign this to Laura to write and then he put it out under his name? Like, wow, or was she just the one fact-checking or something like that? But this was just a propaganda pro-billionaire piece as to why Jeff Bezos bought Bloomberg, and was just essentially a joke from start to finish. And it, like, even in the second last paragraph, just shows how big of a joke this entire thing is. We are so used to brands leaning towards liberalism, and then what happens if such liberal masks slip? Like... So you're telling... They are a mask. They're fake. They don't actually care. So, brands should just follow rules, pay their taxes, and some of these big monopolies, we need to either break them up or seize the means of production, because they just refuse to, take care of everybody. So, and they're destroying the environment. So we just need to make sure that we're doing better, because